Smart shades can really add a wow factor to your smart home and also be a place for some helpful automation to save on heating and cooling. And just like their lighting products, Lutron's been making the gold standard of smart shades for years, but you've needed to part with what can feel like a lot of gold just to get them, with most configurations quickly getting into many thousands of dollars. But now Lutron's hoping to bring the quality and reliability of their Serena shades to a new line of Caseta shades that's about half the cost. I've continued to be impressed with my higher end Lutron Serena shades I installed back in 2019, and Lutron sent me some of their new Caseta shades to check out. So have Lutron made the right compromises to make these shades the right fit for your smart home, or am I just going to be throwing some shade, as the cool kids say these days? And I also want to get to what I think is the killer feature Lutron shades have that makes me want to pick them over other options. If you're new here, I'm Eric Welander. I've been working in app development on top of Apple's platform since 2011 and building out my smart home here on YouTube since 2018. So if you're into Apple or smart home tech, consider subscribing. Now, the first and biggest signs of cost cutting Lutron has done with the Caseta Smart Shades line is in the ordering process. If you've looked into Lutron's higher end Serena shades, you know they come in a wide variety of colors and finishes in roller, honeycomb, and woodblind styles. And yes, I know Lutron has even higher end lines of shades like Palladium and Triathlon, but I'm leaving those out of this video since they're a step in price above what we're already considering the expensive option to be in Serena shades. Caseta, on the other hand, offers all the colors you could possibly want, as long as that's either white or a specific shade of gray. And there are no wood or Venetian blind options. Serena shades are also available already at a number of different retailers. Now, the new Caseta Smart Shades are currently only available direct from Lutron at CasétaWireless.com, the same site where you might have already been for Lutron's Caséta Wireless smart light switches. I ordered 2 gray blackout honeycomb shades that Lutron gave me for this review with no strings attached. This video is not sponsored. One of my shades needed to be on trim outside mount, and then I did above trim outside mount for the other. This actually made for a nice comparison of these two choices, which you'll see in a minute. But before you check out, be sure to add all the Pico remotes you want to your cart as well. These Pico remotes will come with the shade markings on them instead of the normal lighting options you can get at your local store. The shade versions can also be purchased separately, but they're just harder to find, so save yourself the trouble and order them with your shades. We'll talk more about these remotes and how you can use them in a minute. After checkout, these blinds are close to identical to the more expensive Serena shade counterparts. At least for US customers like myself, they're still assembled and shipped from the US. Mechanically, they also seem very similar, if not identical, to Serena shades, but we'll talk more about the performance after we get them installed. During the ordering process, you give each shade a name that can help you keep track of which one goes on which window. And when your boxes arrive, they have those names on the labels. This is pretty standard with a lot of shade ordering, but it's a nice touch and something you might not be familiar with if you've never gone through this process before. In the box, you get the shades as well as mounting brackets and screws, and potentially some spacers if you chose the outside mount above window trim option. I didn't see much in terms of instructions in my boxes. Installing shades is pretty straightforward, but it would be nice to have at least a QR code to find instructions on my phone, and batteries are not included in the box, which is something to keep in mind for installation. Each shade requires 8 D batteries. I thought I'd planned ahead by getting a big pack of D batteries at Costco before my installation. And then I realized it was still short of the 16 batteries that I needed for my 2 shades, so I had to go back out to the store to get more. Since these are smart shades, you can't close them until they have power, so you'll need to add batteries if you expect to be able to add them to your smart home or just even open and close the shades. That said, these batteries, in my experience, last forever. I don't think I've had to change my Serena Shade batteries yet after installing them 6 years ago. Well, this kind of battery setup is more difficult up front and probably less eco-friendly. I much prefer the convenience over the lithium-ion batteries in shades that I have to remember to charge every 6 months or so. Installing the on-trim mount shade was very straightforward. Then I just needed to reset the shade before it was able to successfully add to my smart home in the Caséta Wireless app. This gets us to the hub that will power all of these shades in your smart home, the Caséta Wireless hub, or bridge as you might call it. Just like the higher end Serena Shades, the Caséta Shades communicate with your smart home over Lutron's Caséta Wireless bridge. If you already have one of these bridges from Lutron Caséta Wireless smart switches, that will work for your shades too. And also, if you just want the motorized control, you can also pair these shades directly to a Pico remote instead. Of course, Pico remotes brings me to what I think is the killer feature of these shades that everyone else in the industry should copy. One of the important parts of any shade is being able to open and close it easily. And like a lot of smart shades, there's no manual override for pulling these shades down on your own. So having a Pico remote nearby is essential, and the Pico remote's a great option for this. It looks like a light switch and can be stuck to the wall or mounted to look like it's actually a light switch on the wall, or put on a pedestal on the table, or you can just use it on its own, which is great because it's really small. One really great feature of these beyond the light switch appearance portion is the center favorite button, like a lot of Lutron's products. So you can set the shades to a common level that you'll want them to be at, and then if you press and hold this center button until the tiny LED light on the remote blinks, it'll then save that as your favorite setting. Then simply press the button again anytime and it will get you back to your preferred shade level. The top and bottom buttons, of course, go straight to closed or open. So it's great to have a height between closed and open that you can get to in a single tap. One of the other details I noticed is how quiet the motors for these shades are. Some other brands, like the SmartWing shades I've had, didn't sound bad per se, but I much prefer the Caséta Shades' lack of noise, which is very much in line with the Lutron Serena Shades I've tried. Another detail Lutron brought from the Serena Shade line is the ability to move perfectly in sync. When I had my briefing with Lutron at CES this year, I had them trigger multiple shades in the same room, and they do go up and down right in sync at the same rate, which is really nice to see, especially if you have multiple windows opening and closing at the same time. The responsiveness for my smart home is also just as solid as other Lutron Caséta Wireless products like smart switches or smart plugs. Another cool feature is how these shades open to reveal the battery door when it's finally time to swap out all those D batteries. You just pop two little clear plastic tabs at the top and the shade folds down to show the battery compartments. There are also two little tabs on the back side of the shades which allow you in a similar way to remove the entire shade from its mount, but these tabs are especially hard to access on the above mount version as it's right next to your window trim, which gets me to all the struggle I had with the above trim mount option. Lutron ships this kind of mount with plastic spacers to help expand the shade to go over your window trim and line up nicely, and they also ship it with longer screws. Now, I found just, at least for my setup, these screws were a little too long and hard to put in when I was mounting the shade, and then the short screws, which are also included, were too short. So after some trial and error, I ended up using some of my own screws to hang this shade. But aside from the tabs maybe being a little bit harder to reach, once it was installed, the above mount seems to be just as good of an option as any. You just might need to play with, depending on the type of mount you choose and the nature of your windows, the screws included in the box might not be exactly what you need. But I think that's pretty hard for Lutron to size up one kind of screw that would work in every kind of situation. As for the smart home integration, I've added these shades to my good night and wake up scenes for the kids, which means then they work with the smart buttons we use on the wall for triggering these particular scenes. So what about those energy-saving automations I mentioned at the top of the video? Well, it also turns out that the sun tends to be pretty powerful at heating your home, which could be exactly what you need or quite the opposite. And that's where there's a helpful automation that comes in that I've been using with smart shades for years. One of my kids' rooms is right in the afternoon sunlight, and in the summer, if we leave the shades in that room open, the room will get to be roasting hot in the evening. And when it's time for bed, that means we need to crank up the AC and run the fans to cool down the room. If we just remember to put the shades down in the afternoon, it's not a problem. Thankfully, with a smart home, we don't have to remember. So let me show you how I have this automation set up. So I pulled up this automation here in Apple Home, which at 3 p.m. in the afternoon daily, then runs a shortcut. And that shortcut actually uses a cool feature within Apple Home, which is that you can base automations off of your local weather conditions. So it gets the weather for my local current location, then it will actually close the shades in that particular room. It'll set the shades to be closed. One of the other ways I've also run this automation, if you're into more advanced Apple Home automation, is using something like an Eve Weather or another external temperature sensor for Apple Home that can then give you your temperature outside your house for use in automations like this. And so I've also used this with a conditional automation where if the temperature is above a certain point based on the Eve Weather's temperature, instead of the temperature that might come from Apple Home with shortcuts, then it will automate that way, because sometimes the temperature in the weather report might not be exactly what the temperature is at your home. So there are different ways to play with it, but I think just having this thing where at a particular time of day, the shades in a particular room close, then it can block out the sun and really save you to keep your home much cooler during that time. So are these Caséta Wireless shades right for your smart home? I think they're a really compelling product and you end up getting a lot for your money. They might be the best value out there in smart shades. If you can find a way that the gray or white color and the limited style options work with your design choices for your room, I really think you should consider Caséta Wireless shades. Of course, if you're really set on having a particular style or you want something like wood blinds, you might look up to Serena Shades, but there's one big elephant in the room with Lutron that might make you choose other options. And that's that so far, while Lutron is actively involved with the CSA behind the Matter standard, they don't support Matter with any of their products, including Caséta Wireless light switches or Caséta Wireless shades. I think that could be really important, especially as you might down the road be wanting to add these smart shades into multiple smart home ecosystems. Of course, Lutron on their own already supports a lot of different smart home ecosystems. You can simultaneously have these shades in, let's say, Amazon and Google and Home Assistant and Apple Home, and the list goes on, but it's not over the official Matter standard. So if you're really set on having a Matter-driven smart home, you might look at something like Eve's motion blinds, which I have not played with myself, but I've heard good things about, as well as the Smart Wings Matter over Thread shades that I recently reviewed on my channel. But as long as you're okay with realizing that these don't support Matter and might never support Matter, I think they're a really great option for you to consider. And if you want to see more about those Smart Wings shades I mentioned in my review, I have that video linked here on the screen. As well, if you want to see a lot more of what I do with Lutron and how much Lutron really powers my smart home, you can check out my smart home tour linked over here on the screen. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.